Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sabrina. Born and raised in Montreal, Quebec. I come from a very tight-knit family. I have one sister who's 2 years older than me. I would say that my upbringing was a semi-religious one. I did spend a lot of time with my grandmother on my father's side growing up, and she was a religious woman. We used to go to church on Sundays, had catechism classes, so we did our, the baptism, the first communion, the confirmation, and prayed daily. So yes, I would say my upbringing was a semi-religious one. I do have a lot of memories from my childhood. Of course, like celebrating Christmas and Easter. There was always the Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny aspect of those holidays, and then you also have the more religious view of those holidays as well. And our family, we did celebrate the more religious views of those holidays. And I do have a lot of fond memories of praying with my grandmother, praying for our relatives that have passed away, also praying the rosary as well. I would say that I did happily identify myself as a Catholic at the time. We did read the Bible, we learned it in church on weekends, but I would say that I identified myself as a Catholic quite happily. My relationship with Jesus, peace be upon him, as a Catholic was a pretty strong one at the time growing up. I would say that daily prayers were absolutely important. I couldn't go to sleep without, praying that night, or else I would have like a guilty conscience. It just became like a habit that I had since, as I grew up, even as I became, a little bit more distant from the religion and, didn't attend church every Sunday as I got older. But I did always pray. That is something that I always kept as a daily thing. My views of Islam prior to converting, I was a teenager, of course, at the time, so I didn't really have a lot of knowledge of, different religions. I would just, the media did influence a lot of my opinion. I was quite ignorant to the religion and what it stood for and, what Islam really was. I just felt like it was something really foreign. Of course, I had, all the misrepresentations of the religion. I did have a negative view towards it based on the media and all the events that had happened. For example, the events of 9/11, right away you see this is a, Islam is labeled on this type of thing. So when someone's ignorant of the religion, you're going to look at an event like that and say, well, why would the religion condone this? Why would Muslims condone this? So for sure I did have a negative view, which was of course all misrepresented, but I did have a negative view of Islam prior, as a teenager. My quest for Islam really began when my grandmother passed away, because she was, the main part of me, of the, all the religious aspects of my life growing up. When she had passed away, I was a teenager, and like most teenagers, I was very, I did pray every night, of course, but I was very distant from the religion at that time. And when she had passed away, it was almost as though, the same way you get into a car accident and you don't really ask for it. It's like it forces you to wake up, because we're always postponing those thoughts of, what's after life, what is the purpose of life. And when you're a teenager, that's the last thing on your mind. Even though you might have, spiritual feelings towards, religion and God, of course you're gonna, you're too busy with your social life and such things. Whereas when she passed away, I felt like it just forced me to wake up and look at my life from outside of the box. And, I was, ashamed with what my life was at that time. And I felt that, I should be reflecting, in action what is in my heart, because I did have, a huge, spiritual side that I felt that I was always neglecting at the time. I came across the Holy Quran, not necessarily in a specific event. Of course, when I had decided I was wanting to learn more about different religions and learn about Islam in particular, of course I did look to, the Quran. I did a lot of online research where, of course, you see a lot of, good and bad, of course. So I did prefer books at the time. I was given an English version of the Quran, and this was all prior to me converting. I would say a good year and a half prior. And of course I read it, front to back. And yeah. The particular verse that I would say that inspired me in the Quran was, the fact that there is a whole chapter named Maryam. Of course, as, coming from a Catholic background, you're like, oh, this is so familiar to me, and then everything that, specific verses that talk about the Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, of course, that, resonated with me, coming from a Catholic background, and the concept of Jesus. I would say, once I learned that from the Quran, I felt that it totally changed my whole aspect. My whole view of being a Catholic was totally shattered after reading Surah Maryam. My view of hijab prior to learning about Islam, I would see Muslim women wearing it. I would assume that they were, either forced to wear it, or, that it was some sort of, written in stone rule that, it's like maybe they didn't want to wear it, but they felt that they had to as Muslims. So, of course, I didn't really like the idea of anything that, where you're being told to do something. Of course, that's viewed as something oppressive, which, even today there is that misrepresentation still stands with a lot of people. They see a woman in hijab, they assume that, she's oppressed or she doesn't have equal rights. So, of course, I did have those same views prior, but, now, after looking into it, of course, I look at the hijab as a totally different light, a totally different, view, where it's very liberating, for a woman to wear hijab, and it's absolutely a choice. Whereas, it is written in the Quran. It is, all the things that's required from us as Muslims. There are written things, but there's no compulsion in the religion. So of course, these are the type of things where you would decide to do it for yourself, not because you're not convinced by it or you don't want to wear it. I would say the media did affect my view of Islam. I think the same way it would affect a lot of people that don't have any base knowledge of Islam. If someone's just, they see Muslims, they're not familiar with the religion, and then they're being told, all these atrocities are happening, in the name of Islam, or, people that are doing outrageous things in the name of Islam. Of course, you're gonna, without any base knowledge of Islam, to say, no, Islam doesn't, condone such behavior, Islam is against such behavior. Of course, you're gonna automatically assume that, Islam is somehow responsible for those actions. So the media does a pretty good job at propagating that image that Islam is associated with, so much negative in the world, but it's not the case. It's not the case. After learning about Islam, of course, you come to realize that, you're living in a world where Islam is so badly misrepresented by the media, by people, by Muslims themselves as well. And, when you're looking into the religion, it's like you're almost confused, because you're like, so many people are quoting the Quran to say this, Quran says this, or, do all these crimes, and you're looking at it and you're like, no, it doesn't, and then even Muslims are helping to fuel that ignorance, that hate, because they're saying, oh, the Quran says this, and, so you have like people misquoting the Quran, misrepresenting the religion from inside and outside, and I feel like all it really takes is that person to just pick up a book, pick up the Quran, and just read it front to back, and you won't find, what the media is, trying to tell you what Islam is. Don't look at the Muslims for your opinion on Islam. Pick up the Quran, which is, the root, the fundamental, book of Islam, of course, and read it, and you'll come to realize, that it's not the case. So the day that I officially reverted, that I did my Shahada, was the Mawlid al-Nabi. It was at a friend's house. She was having a get-together for women at her house, kind of like a small party, I guess, sort of thing. And it had already been like a year that I'm learning the religion at this point, and they had brought it up to me if I was, interested in, if I was ready in doing my Shahada, and without any pressure, telling me take your time, just. And of course, at that time, I was, more than ready. I had, had already learned, so much at that point. I had already accepted Islam in my heart. So I was just, I don't know what was, stopping me from doing my Shahada. I guess I was just scared to take that last final official step. So I remember I did my Shahada, and shortly after, 30 seconds it took to sink in, and I just sat down, and I remember just bursting into tears. And obviously not tears of sadness, it was tears of happiness, but even more so tears of relief. It was as though I had, as I said, I had accepted Islam, it had been already a long time coming, and just to officially say it out loud, to, do my Shahada, was just it was such a relief to just finally, make that official step, that I knew going forward from that day, from that moment, that, I was going to be identifying myself as a Muslim. So it was definitely an amazing experience. And I remember, like, I needed time to myself. I went to, like, one of the rooms upstairs, and I had called one of my best friends at the time, and I had told her, like, just like any other thing, when something happy happens in your life, you want to call the people that you love and care about, and you want to tell them the good news. And I remember telling her, and her reaction was like, well, what do you want me to tell you? Like, which was definitely disappointing, but it also made me realize a lot in that moment, like about, how you can have, like, brothers and sisters in humanity and brothers and sisters in faith. So from that moment forward, I was kind of like able to differentiate, my relationship with different people, which, I think it is important to have, relationship with all kinds of different people, but, you stand in different places with different people, that's for sure. My family's reaction to me reverting to Islam, alhamdulillah, they were more than supportive. They continue to be more than supportive. As I mentioned earlier, my family is very tight-knit. My family, like, I couldn't picture any better family to, the way that they've supported me in everything, from when I announced it to them, whatever makes you happy, whatever brings you closer to God, do whatever you feel is good for you. From when I started to wear the hijab, complimenting the way that I wear it, or, such things. And, if there was a party, like a cousin's birthday, or a cousin's, anything, where, there was going to be food served, they always made sure to look out for me, make sure that there's either fish or vegetarian option, or, and my aunt especially, she's amazing. Every holiday, it's always at her house, and she always makes sure to, to go to where I buy my meat. And, whether it's Thanksgiving turkey, it's halal. Whether it's like, a Christmas dinner, it's halal, no matter what. So my family is, alhamdulillah, like, I couldn't ask for, more supportive family, for sure. I would say that the hardest thing, going from, being Catholic to, being a Muslim, the hardest thing to accept, I don't think there's anything necessarily hard to accept about the truth, just, coming to terms with it. The only thing that did take some time, of course, when you're raised, with a religion, especially with the concept of Jesus, it does, I did totally, like, switch, I didn't really believe in the concept of Jesus the way Catholics do from the minute that I learned the Islamic perspective, but it does take some time to, adapt to that idea, after being Catholic for so many years, and, looking at, Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, in such a way, and then having to change that. I would say that was, be maybe the hardest part, I would say. My first year as a Muslim was it's quite an experience. From when I did my shahada, I was, you have to start reading the ingredients of things, making sure there's no gelatin, and, it takes adapting, it takes getting used to, of course, and then there was my first Ramadan, so I had to fast, for the first time. I was really excited about it. I had started to wear hijab at this time as well. I wasn't prior, only unless I was going to the masjid, so I decided to start wearing the hijab officially with my first Ramadan. And the first year, there's so much adapting. You learn so much about yourself. You of course, you're always learning more about the religion. That's something that never changes. But it takes time to adapt, for sure. I had quit my job at the time. You start to really see, especially with hijab, I feel like you're really labeled as a Muslim going forward in society when you start to wear the hijab, and this can be a challenge for some people. And I felt like at the time, I had to quit my job just because I needed that extra time to, like, really, grow within myself and, feel comfortable with my decisions and not feel like I needed to explain myself or, go against the grain per se. And, going to school, also everyone looks at you like, did you lose your mind? Like, what's going on? Like, you just come in with hijab one day and, of course, like, I didn't have the whole wardrobe set, so I'm like all mismatched and like just trying to, dress as modest as possible. But it's, I think having a support system is really important in the first year. Of course, I had my family, I had really amazing, friends, to help me, support me in these things. So, I mean, it wasn't hard, but it definitely, there's always, takes a lot of adapting, for sure. After I did my shahada, I mean, even prior to doing my Shahada, I did have a lot of support from the Muslim community. I was attending the masjid prior, so I did have a huge support system in terms of the Muslim community. They definitely helped me out a lot, in terms of like writing down the prayer for me, like the transliteration so I can pronounce it in Arabic properly, the steps, everything, books, any books that I might have needed, they supplied me with. Even when I decided to wear the hijab, they did like a little get-together party for me, and like everyone brought me hijabs, and which was like definitely like appreciated at the time. It was really nice and heartwarming to see like people gather, people be supportive on such a deep level. When these are like your sisters in Islam, it's such a deep connection that you can have with such people. But I definitely had a lot of support from them. I would say my most difficult challenge when after embracing Islam wasn't so much a challenge that came from myself. It was more having to live in a society where Islam is misrepresented, where Muslim women are misrepresented, where there's so much confusion as to what Islam stands for. And so I mean, I'm comfortable with my decision. I did my own research. I'm happy with my decision. I'm happy with the person that I am and that I continue to grow to become. The only challenge is, when you're living in a society where you constantly need to, justify or prove, or where people are always trying to make you compromise on, something important. Like, oh, well, for example, just to give an example here, if you're going to go to like, someone's birthday party, they're not Muslim, let's say, they want to go to a place that serves alcohol, or like, a little bit more of like a, night atmosphere type of thing, and it's like, oh, well, you can come, you don't have to drink, or like, it's like, I don't feel that I need to, compromise my beliefs in order to, make other people happy. I feel like, I've set, certain, expectations of my own self, and I need to stick by them, and I feel like society is always kind of trying to tug at you to, try to make you like lean one way, whether it could even be with hijab, like, why don't you wear, hijab this way, or why don't you wear more makeup, or, it's always about pleasing the others, always about pleasing other people, and I feel like, I'm comfortable with myself, and, I'm just happy like pleasing Allah, so I don't have to worry about society, but it is a challenge, because, I mean, that's where we live, right? Was I able to decipher the difference between religion and culture? I think as a revert, absolutely. I think you see it on, like I see it before I reverted, I see it after I reverted, you see it in all religions and cultures, especially when you're looking at a religion that's, the predominant religion of a specific country. For so many years, the religion tends to get mixed with the culture, and both of those things on their own are great. Religion is a great thing, culture is a great thing. You can, it's amazing to learn about other cultures, the food, and all that sort of thing. But when you're mixing them both in the same pot, you're not able to, to serve it to everybody, right? Because, like, for example, if you're, from, let's say, a Muslim country where you've been raised in a certain way that culture has been really intertwined with the religion, in the same pot, and then you start to see, like, you're taking the halal with the haram and the haram with the halal. You have to really draw the line between culture and religion. I think it's important because, that's what also keeps a lot of people away from the religion as well, is, they will associate, the backwards customs, or, the things that they might not agree with because it's not, from their culture, let's say, with the religion, and that person is labeling that with the religion. And I think it can be a very poisonous thing. I think it is important, even though those two things are good on their own, it is really important to draw the line between the two. Of course, within any community, whether it's like a church or a mosque or a synagogue, you tend to have, based on language preference, you tend to have, like, let's say most like Pakistanis will go to like a Pakistani, a mosque where they will speak the, Urdu, let's say, and Arabic mosque, the different dialects, they'll go to a specific mosque where they're comfortable with the dialect that they understand, which is fine. I mean, it's important to to mix and integrate with different communities, but when you're going to the same place and you're going there for religious reasons, and they're mixing the culture, and then it's like that's how you start to have, like, oh, I don't want to go to this mosque because they, they'll do it this way and they do it that way, where there shouldn't be any specific ways based on cultures, because Islam is a universal religion. It's for all cultures. So we shouldn't have to have, people feeling uncomfortable or, feeling that they can't go to a specific place, based on cultural practices that are mixed in with the religion, for sure. The reason I chose Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, to follow them, the word Shia means followers of Ahlul Bayt, so this is our examples. These are our role models in Islam. Ahlul Bayt to me is essential to the religion of Islam, and to learn about the Imams and the way that they lived their life, the way that they were martyred. You can have a university class, multiple semesters, just learning about it, just learning about the different Imams, their cause, their sacrifice. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, for example, like the events of Ashura, that took place in Karbala. Like, this is something, like, you don't have to necessarily be Muslim. You can be anybody with any sense of humanity, and look at the story and be completely inspired by it. So, I mean, as Muslims, we'll call ourselves Shia of Ahlul Bayt. It's a responsibility on us. We can't just know. With knowledge comes responsibility, and I feel like once we know that Imam Hussein alayhi salam did this sacrifice, we can't just let the day-to-day oppression that happens, go by without us standing up against it. We need to be the flag bearers of his message. We need to continue that. This is our responsibility as Muslims. So for me, Ahlul Bayt is not just an inspiration. It's completely essential as my responsibility as a Muslim to the religion of Islam. When I was learning about Islam, I made sure to check every corner, all the different, I learned about the Sahaba, I learned about Ahlul Bayt, and, I would say, coming from a Catholic background, the story that stood out to me the most would be, the events of Karbala, Ashura, because, when, as a Catholic, we believe, that, Jesus died for your sins, right? So there's that sense of, deep emotion and love towards Jesus from a Catholic perspective. There's a lot of love there. Imam Hussein also sacrificed, right? So I think a lot of Christians can look at the story, and resonate with it. And where I was at that point learning about Islam, for me it was like it was almost like Imam Hussein alayhi salam was like my new Jesus, my new like inspiration in life. He sacrificed. He did the ultimate sacrifice. So for me, as I mentioned earlier, it became essential. It wasn't just like here's Islam and here are all the different details surrounding it that are important but not essential. For me, Ahlul Bayt, that's where the difference was drawn, is that it wasn't just an important aspect of Islam. It was completely essential to Islam. I would say a personality that I feel the most connected to would be Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but of course it's not limited to that alone. The reason why I say this is because with everything that's happening in today's world, like anybody of any religion, whether they're even atheist, will all agree that humanity is slowly being torn down. There's always oppression happening. Every day, you can look at the news and you can see a story and just feel like, we're here comfortable in our country. We don't have so much going on. Although it is catching up to us as well, because oppression, oppressors, tyranny, all this. If it's knocking on someone else's door, and banging it down and oppressing somebody on the other side of the world, and you're not doing anything about it, in your comfortable bubble where you are right now, eventually that tyrant's going to come knocking on your door. And I think that's what we're seeing today as well. We're living in such a peaceful country, and little by little we look at the media and these things are happening here as well. And I feel like it's the bigger picture. That's what Imam Hussein stood for. It wasn't about just the religion. It was about humanity, and humanity is, the word human, something we all have in common regardless of religion. And I think this is why he's an inspiration, not just for Muslims, not just for me, but for everybody, anybody with a sense of humanity. And it's like a responsibility, we have to stand up as a, all together, Muslims, Christians, which we see now, it's happening now, there's a lot of unity based on humanity, like there's a lot of unity because, maybe it's not the same religious cause, but it's the same cause. It's all good against evil, right? Bad people, they don't take their days off. They don't, so it's the good people that have to stand up against it, like we don't want to, like good people are always going to be like, try to look and see the best, like maybe these things are not as bad as they seem, but as we can see, the world is slowly getting worse and worse. So we're all going to have to stand up united against, all the bad that's happening. So for me, Imam Hussein is that ultimate role model, that ultimate figure. I mean, there's been many in the world, like, Martin Luther King Jr., for example. There's been so many role models that go down in history, but Imam Hussein is the ultimate one. I did have the opportunity to go visit, alhamdulillah. It was actually after my wedding. We had planned it as like our honeymoon destination. So we did plan it. We went. It was obviously a dream of mine from the get-go. Just to be there in person was, it's hard to explain it in words. I guess people that have been can relate to it. It's it's very hard to explain it in words. It's all felt with the heart. I remember when the plane was arriving in Najaf. I remember like just crying on the plane. It was just like a total mix of like excitement. I just to be there was like a dream come true, and I felt so at home. I felt really at peace with myself. It was like a piece of heaven on earth. That's how I really felt. And when I entered the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, it was just generally it was just beautiful. The chandeliers, there was birds in the chandeliers. It honestly felt like heaven. And I remember we had gone for Maghrib and Isha prayer. It was my first day there. We had to go straight there, of course. And I remember I couldn't even pray because I was just a wreck. Like I was just too emotional, too happy, and just like I was just tears of joy. And it was very surreal for me. And I would love nothing more than to go back over and over again, because it's like a piece of heaven on earth, to be honest. Did I struggle with the concept of intercession? I don't think I did. I know it's a huge debate within the Muslim community. For me, it's quite simple. It's mentioned in the Quran multiple times. Every time it is mentioned, it's also followed by with His permission, by Allah's permission. So, Allah is capable of all. So, and when we learn about the, status of Ahlul Bayt, I think this is the very crucial part when learning about this, because we know, intercession, is possible by Allah's permission. So, who would be worthy, of interceding for anybody except for, somebody who's completely perfect? And this is where it's important to look at Ahlul Bayt, and learn about who they were. And I feel like with that knowledge, it becomes an easier concept to understand. My first time, my first Muharram was actually prior to me doing my Shahada, before I actually officially became a Muslim. When I was learning about the religion, I decided, okay, I need to go to the masjid. I need to really see what it's about. I want to meet Muslims, and it happened to be during Muharram, and it's almost like perfect timing, because I remember going in and they were reciting Ziyarat Ashura, and I remember there was a sister, beside me, and when it was time to do sujood towards the end, she made me do sujood with her, and I remember just thinking I didn't understand the language at the time, but I was totally intrigued. I was intrigued, and then when they were reciting the eulogies, about the events that took place during Ashura, I had already a little bit of, knowledge about, Ahlul Bayt, but not so much in detail at that time. And they were, everyone just began to cry, and I remember thinking what a beautiful thing, so of course naturally, you're gonna go home and learn even more into detail about, Ashura, and why are people mourning, this event. And of course, anybody with half a heart would, also break down in tears with this story. So for me, it was just my first time ever entering the masjid was during Muharram. So, you know, that was an amazing experience for me, and I feel like it really, that's also why Imam Hussein alayhi salam is such an inspiration for me, because he was like, I guess the part that really made me, you know, so convinced, you know, of Islam, you know, like for somebody to sacrifice it all for that, you know, it really made me feel like this is the right path, you know, following Ahlul Bayt is the right path. And, you know, and then of course after I did my Shahada, after I had already been officially Muslim, you know, I would go to the processions, which I found were really amazing, because, you know, you're out in public, you know, and you're telling people about the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You're telling, like, and it's relevant to them, because, you know, as I said, he's a role model for anybody, like, you know, from a humanitarian perspective. So, you know, people would, you know, I remember one winter was my first time doing the procession, and it was, you know, a woman had asked me, what is all this, you know, what's going on? And, you know, the procession had kept going and going, and, you know, I had lost them in sight. They were already gone, and I was just talking with this woman. I remember my feet were so cold I couldn't feel them, and we were just talking and talking, and she knew who he was, you know, and she was like, you know, a French Quebecois lady, not a Muslim, and she's like, yes, I learned about him, you know, from a very long time ago, and she was so intrigued to know more. And, you know, we had like, you know, a beautiful conversation about it, and I just thought, like, this is what it's about, you know, it's about spreading the message. And, you know, it was an amazing experience, the procession. The events of Karbala inspired me. I would say, like, they would inspire anybody when you learn about, you know, the events that took place. It's such a hard question to answer in detail, because, I mean, there's so many aspects of it, right? You know, you have, you know, sacrifice upon sacrifice, you know, Abbas, like, going to the water, you know, and then throwing it back, you know, because he couldn't drink water, you know, knowing that, you know, Imam Hussein and Sukaina were thirsty. And it's just you know, every time I drink a glass of water right now, I can't not remember that. You know, Ashura, the events that took place, is something that it sticks with you on a daily basis in life. You know, even when I put my hijab, you know, sometimes it's not easy. You know, sometimes you do, you know, want to conform to society standards of fashion. And then I remember, you know, Zainab, you know, alayhi salam, and like how, you know, she had to, you know, the struggles that she had to put up with after, you know, and having her hijab taken from her, and it's just like this. It's an honor, you know what I mean? It's something that, like, remembering the events of Ashura, it's essential in everyday life. It takes everything into perspective, you know. Whether you're drinking water, whether you're, you know, struggling with wearing hijab or how to wear hijab, everything really, whether it's standing up against tyranny, you know, sometimes it could even be a bully in school, and you're just like, you know what, like, there's no way Imam Hussein would let you, you know, do what you're doing to this person. And it makes you be brave, you know, it gives you courage to stand up for what's right, even if the cost is your life. And I feel like it's just an amazing, you know, amazing thing that everybody needs to know the story. Everybody needs to, you know, take it into consideration on a day-to-day basis, because, like, it's something that you carry with you every day in life. I think the Muslim community in general is doing a pretty good job in letting the world know about Imam Hussein. I noticed that, you know, in the years that I've been a Muslim, like, I feel like more and more people are aware. You know, more and more people ask questions about Imam Hussein alayhi salam in particular, and I feel like it's an amazing thing, because, you know, as I said, it's something that can affect anybody, whether they're Muslim or not. And I feel like that's, you know, that's the important part for most people. You know, whether they're non-Muslim, they need to know about, you know, the events that took place and how we can learn from that today, so history does not repeat itself, because it is repeating itself. So, I mean, in general, I think Muslims are doing a, you know, pretty good job. You know, there's Ahlul Bayt TV now. Like, you know, people are able to. We live in a society where it's not just books, right? You don't have to go to a masjid to, you know, ask questions and feel like, you know, you can go online. You know, you can pick up a book. You can go to. I'm sure anybody that has a, you know, any Muslim friend, you know, ask them these questions. And, you know, people ask me questions. I'm more than happy to answer them. You know. There's so many outlets available for people to learn the message. But I mean, it's a never-ending thing, right? Until it's in every corner of the world, until every single person knows, who Imam Hussein alayhi salam is, then I mean the job is not complete. It's not complete, but it's getting there. And I feel like every year more and more people are knowing, and I think it's great. I would say my words of advice for anybody who is looking to learn about Islam, or looking to, who's already looked into Islam and wants to, officially identify themselves as a Muslim. I think when learning about Islam, the only advice I can give is, yes, you do need support, but do all the thinking on your own. Get the books, that's as far as it would go in terms of, reaching out to people, but you want to make all those decisions on your own. You want to, make sure that you're not being influenced by, any outside people. This is a decision you're making for God, right? So, we pray to God. God hears us all the time. So, I would recommend just, doing your due diligence in terms of the knowledge, reading the books, and then just asking Allah for, for the guidance, to make it easy for you. With that being said, if ever you do find yourself at a point where you feel like, this is the truth, I need to accept it. This is also a hard, hill to come over, because, knowledge is a responsibility. And like me, when I came to the realization that, Islam was the truth for me, there was no turning back. Even if I wanted to, even if I said, reverting seems like it would be a hassle, let me just, stay as is and, maybe go to the masjid occasionally. No, for me, I had to, do what I had to do. So I would just say, you have to have the courage to accept the truth once you've come to it. I would say a message that I have for Muslim viewers would be to, I guess I would say to, even though you're born into a religion, you could be from a predominantly Muslim country, try not to associate the culture with the religion. Try to reach out to different communities. Try to have Islam unified as one ummah, the way it should be. Not to differentiate between small differences, because in the end, this is not just Muslims in general. Even Christians, as I was saying earlier, it's going to be, there's good and then there's bad. You know what I mean? The small differences can be worked out, but the good people do need to unite. Even if it's Christians and Muslims, as we see happening in Iraq right now, we have to unite against the bad. And as a Muslim community, to use excuses such as culture, to divide, little racial, things here and there, whether it's a matter of marriage or these things, I feel like that needs to all be put aside, because it's not Islam. You need to hold to the religion, as one ummah, So, take the culture with a grain of salt. Culture is a good thing, but don't let it interfere with the righteous message of Islam.